indeed. Yeah, powerful indeed. I wanna live my most abundant life with the faith in God that fills me. Yeah, to be a blessing and let my light shine bright in the kingdom for others to see. No more ways to be denied, no more reasons not to shine. Free in the kingdom to be me. Free in the world and all will see that the God in me is powerful indeed. And the power to get wealth is working in me. I am called to be a curse breaker, Abraham's seed. Poverty must bow to the anointing and free me indeed. No more ways to be denied, no more reasons not to shine. Free in the kingdom to be me. Free in the world and all will see that the God in me is powerful indeed. Yeah, powerful indeed.
Thanks for joining us on tonight, and welcome to the Kingdom Creatives podcast, From Vision to Voice. Now, this is the podcast where kingdom-minded authors, artists, innovators share the story behind the story. You know who I am. I'm your host, Deb Howard, your abundant life coach, and I am just excited to be here on today. I can't wait for us to get into this conversation. Now, let me tell you first, this series is dedicated to uncovering the divine vision, personal journey, and creative process of kingdom voices called to influence our culture and build legacy. So listen, whether you're a seasoned scribe or just starting your creative path, you're going to be inspired, equipped, and empowered to move boldly from vision to voice after today's episode. Yes, so let's dive into it. Listen, I am excited, honored, privileged, all the good words, to present and introduce to many of you Sheree Grinstead. And I'm going to pass it to her so she can introduce herself and tell us what she does.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Ms. Deb. I'm Coach Sheree, the single parent life coach. I'm a certified life coach specializing in healthy relationships and steward leadership. And I obtained my certification through the Say Life Coaching Program. I'm the founder of the Single Parent Life Coach, where our mission is very simple but powerful, empowering single parents to lead with strength, self-love, and purpose.
Great. I love it. So we're going to get into this conversation because I know you guys, like me, who are watching, are excited and interested to figure out what's going on with Coach Sheree. So, Coach, start us off by sharing, how did you get into coaching? What made you decide to become the single life coach?
Well, I'll tell you, my journey as a single parent myself, of course, as a coach was birthed from my own experiences. I guess for 24, almost 25 years, I have been a single parent. I've never been married, raising 3 beautiful children on my own. It has taught me the power of resilience, intentional love, and unwavering faith. Over time, I realized that what I endured and overcome wasn't just for me. It was meant to empower others walking in the same path. We all have different stories, different paths, but I knew I had to create something bigger because bigger than just my testimony. I knew I needed to create something that could help people, the resources that I needed. So I needed to make sure that I could have someone to talk to, because sometimes you don't have that. People say, well, pray about it or go to church. And sometimes the church has the single ministry, but they don't have a ministry for single parents. And so I wanted to be able to reach people like myself that may have dealt with childhood trauma or wasn't heard as a child, or even dealt with some of those things in their children that they were still broken from. And so that it's okay to heal. It's okay to be alone. It's okay to go through the process of, the choices that we've made you know, and take care of our children. It's okay. Um, I believe that I wanted to not only create something bigger than just my testimony, but someone that I could empathize with you. I could let you know you're not alone. You're not in this by yourself. And that even though it seems like, you are doing it by yourself or you're falling apart, you can't get that other parent to co parent, guess what? It's okay. You have to focus on just what you can do and what those children needs are, and also what your needs are without, focus on the fact that you are a quote unquote single parent.
Wow. I know that a lot of people that are watching are single. All right, single parents, whether um, male or female. So what would you say to them who are listening to your story right now? Why would they need to really reach out to you? And do you also serve, you said single parents, do you also serve men, or is it just female single parents?
Yes, both. Because you have a lot of single, even though it's probably majority single mothers out there, you do have some single fathers out there stepping up to the plate, and they should be commended as well. They are heroes. They
Mhm.
call us sheroes, but they are heroes because it's not the nurturing part comes from the mother. That's how God created us. But you have those fathers that have that same gift too, and that passion to take care of their children. And so, um, my perspective, coming from the mother role for a single father, because I don't know what it's like to be a father. What I will say is, I can tell you that what the mother deals with, or when it comes to that co-parenting stage, or when it comes to the things that they don't understand about a mother and the way they think and what they process things. And even with children, even if you're a father and you have a daughter, and that's challenging because you are a male, sometimes you don't understand the things that a female deals with. So those things, that's where I come in at to help you with that, because I'm a mother to daughters and a son. So for me, that's a difficulty sometimes, or should say challenging part. I'm not a man, but I'm raising a son to be a man. And so the things that we may not feel like we have or that we cannot provide, I'm here to help you to know that you can do those things, but through the power of God, not within our own strength. He gives us that strength. He gives us that courage. And so that's what I'm here to encourage you to even just, you know, walk you through it. Because sometimes we already know it. We just need somebody to walk that path with us.
Mhm,
Sometimes we already know it. We just need someone to listen. We
mhm.
need someone to help us think it through and even ask that question, well, what made you think that way? Because it stems from something.
Yeah.
What made you respond to your child in that way? Why did that child become offended? Why did you become offended when your child said that? Because a
Mhm.
lot of times, certain things and certain behaviors can stop when we sit down and communicate. One conversation can change the trajectory or outcome of a situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, that's great. I think I've been a single parent too for a while. I mean, my kids are grown now, but after my
Mm-hmm.
husband died, my daughter was at the time 16 and my son was 10 when he passed. And yeah, that was definitely a challenging time. And I would have loved to have someone, just to talk to about things because I was so accustomed to talking to him, and
Right.
letting him,
Mm-hmm.
kind of help with the discipline and deal with some of even the discipline, especially with my son. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it was a little challenging because I know for myself, Coach Sheree, I felt like I needed like a man to deal with him in some
Yes.
things, because I wanted to make sure, he had the right instruction. Obviously, I've never been a man, but um, but yeah, I had to go with it. And I have five brothers, so that helped a little bit. But
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely can be challenging. So, hopefully, people that hear this will really even reach out to you because I think you can offer some resources and support that
Mm-hmm.
many times we don't even know that we need, right? Sometimes you don't even
Right.
know what you don't know,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
that's amazing. All right, so tell
Absolutely.
us, as we get into this journey, what was a defining moment for you that really let you know that this was the thing that you were supposed to do?
Oh man. There were moments that I felt like, I guess during one of my lowest seasons, I felt unseen, overwhelmed, and worn out. I felt like, nobody heard me. I felt like I didn't even know who I was. It wasn't until I went through a breakup about 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago,
Mm.
that I realized that, gosh, all this time I've been looking to everyone else for validation, to be
Mm.
understood, to make decisions for me, even choosing a school to go to, for education and stuff. Um, and all I had to look to was God.
Mm.
And it took that breakup and me trying to figure out, okay, God, why am I going through all these different changes? And He said, you don't turn to me.
Mm.
You haven't turned to me. And so what happened was, as soon as I turned to Him, I realized I had to let go because I wanted to have control. That's one of the things that I had to relinquish, and I still have to in certain areas.
Yeah.
But I knew in order to hear God and to receive that healing that I needed, I had to first seek Him
Mm.
wholeheartedly. And that's where my healing process started. I
Mm.
understood that I couldn't be happy through a man. I couldn't be happy through my family members. Couldn't be happy through my children. But I realized that there were traumas that happened ever since I was a little girl. My parents were together when I was a kid, but my parents divorced.
Mm.
And so seeing them and the issues that they had from age 7 on up to like 13 when my parents divorced, there were things that they dealt with that, of course, back then you stay in a child's place, sit down, shut up, stay in a child's place. You couldn't ask those questions. You didn't have that safe space. And
Right.
so I knew early on that's what I needed, but I didn't have a name for it. Like all I wanted to do was just be heard. I wanted a voice. I wanted to be able to speak instead of just being pointed to and told, do this, do that. But what about what I'm thinking? I had my thoughts, but I kept them to myself and I internalized everything. Let me say that again. I internalized everything. So I didn't know what mental health was. But of course, it was like, am I the burden? Why am I going through all of these things? And so when my parents would argue, they would say, well, you got to take care of that kid or you got to take that person, or they would involve us in their arguments. And so for me, I only wanted the love and affection that I didn't have because my parents were constantly at each other's throat and they were going through their own battles of brokenness. But again, there wasn't a name for that.
Yeah.
So I couldn't process those things. I was just doing as I was told, but still all while hurting inside and not being heard. And so when I realized that from that breakup, all of those things, when I started seeking God, those layers were coming back and they were being peeled back and showing me who I was. Because I would, especially something simple, you have to be careful with how you speak to your children too. You
Mm.
just like your daddy. My mom will say it. And I'm like,
Mm.
well, dad out there sleeping around before, am I doing? Am I going to do that? I'll be like that with that. But you never know when you say that
Yeah.
what's going on in your child's mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like mom would take us to go and look for him. In the middle of the night we got to go to school. Like, are you serious right now? But we would go because that's mama. She told us to do it, but not knowing all the while how that affected me. And so when or my sister, when I thought about it, and I'm the youngest, so it affected her differently than it did me because she got them at a younger age. I got them in their latter years, and not latter, but later.
Mm.
Um, but in that instance, I realized those traumas, of not being spoken to, not being spoken to in a loving way, but more so in a demanding way. That affected me. Then, of course, my dad not being there and the many arguments or many other places that we would have to live and move here and move there, but sometimes on the same street as my
Mm.
father.
Mm.
Saying that you built this house for us, but then you say you love us, but then you treat us like this. Is this what love is? So I decided to heal so that I wouldn't keep raising broken children. I realized, oh my God, I'm broken. So now I've had all 3 of these children and they're broken.
Mm.
And they have 3 different fathers.
Mm-hmm.
The children they're the blessing in the situation. They aren't the mistake.
Yeah.
It's what it did to get them. But then again, now looking back, was it really a mistake? or was it God's design for my life? And so in those moments of being unheard, unseen, overwhelmed, I just decided to relinquish my control. And I decided to say, okay, let me heal so that not only do I understand where I'm at, I also understand my children. I can hear them when they say, Mom, I didn't like the way you spoke to me. Or when they say, Mom, why did you speak to me that way? Or why did you raise your voice like that? Or why did you look at me that way? Because sometimes we don't know our verbal, the way we talk, our tonality. It could be our body language. Any of those things can trigger your children into thinking that they're not enough, that
Mm-hmm.
they're unseen, that, you know, you're overwhelmed, you're too tired. And then they start venturing off into other things, you know, like a significant other or drugs or, you know, games that promote violence. You know, we don't know how far off we push them if we're not setting that safe space for them. So I knew I had to heal, create that safe space for them. And I also had to make sure that I'm continuing to heal because even though I had my first child at 19 and I didn't know me.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that I didn't know myself, I am not only growing with them or learning them, I'm learning me too.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I had to do was not only give myself grace or give my children grace, but I had to give myself grace too. I had to be compassionate and empathetic toward them, but I also had to give it toward me and be transparent with them and say, Mama didn't receive that type of affection. Now I love on them probably too much, but even in the dating scene, you know, choosing different people that I've dated, they're like, well, why did you, Mama, you're not standing on business. You say you're going to leave that person alone, but it was something in it was something in that person that was securing something in me that I may have still been battling. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times it's affection. A lot of times it's to be loved because I know how to love, but and I know what it looks like when it's given back to me. But
Mm-hmm.
can I really recognize it
Yeah.
when it is coming? And so in order to do that, I need to make sure that I am constantly working on my growth and my healing. But the only way to do that is through God. And so in that, those things of unseen and unheard, not having a voice, I wanted to give that to my children. And not that I have a voice. Oh my, I'm a force to be reckoned with.
Okay. Listen. I love it. Yes, that's such a powerful story. And I think that, many people, including myself, right, very similar in some ways.
Mhm.
Being an introvert, I'm the oldest in my family, though. But yeah, just some similarities there. But I think that, that healing process is so critical for us to
Mhm.
really tap into what God has for us, to really tap into that creative gene that is in all of us. And
Right.
so many times I think we think creativity is only art or music or something
Mhm.
like that. But coaching, especially being a single parent life coach, right? That's
Mhm.
very niche, very significant, but also very needed in this, especially in this season that we're in.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So, and you mentioned faith. So, how did your faith talk to us about your healing process a little bit? Because I think sometimes we don't even recognize that we need healing. That's number one. So,
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
even just being able to say, yes, this impacted me and I needed to be healed from it, is significant. And I think there's so many things I want to say about this, but but I want you to talk to us though about your healing process, how you really came to recognize that, hey, I need healing in this area, and how your faith, really helped you through that process. I think that sometimes we think faith is an instant pill, right? That I'm gonna go to the altar, I'm getting my hands laid on, and ta-da! I'm
Yes.
gonna be healed.
Let me just touch it on that because that is not what's going to happen. Again, like I talked about the layers. And then there's also steps. So sometimes you're doing a layer and you're doing a step. And also, even after the layer and a step, and you have that understanding of what you're dealing with, then there's a residual that comes
Mm,
after that. So the first thing I'll answer was going back to the breakup. When I first realized of the healing that I needed to heal is understand. And it was even God brought back this. He gave me a vision of every guy that I had ever dealt with, whether it was relationally or let's just keep it real. Uh, one of them wham bam thank you sirs. You know, I'm
Yes.
just real and transparent. And
Yes.
so when it comes to that, I think what I had to understand was what was their purpose in my life. Ever since I was a little, probably 13, I went and spent a summer with a cousin of mine who needed a babysitter. And she took me to this church that she went to. And of course, it's like, oh, you have to wear a dress. And I'm just, can we do come as you are? But, um, but we went there and it was a little different from Baptist, the way I grew up. And this guy was a prophet, and he prophesied over my life. He said, "You are the generational curse breaker." And I remember him laying hands on me and praying over me, and me just laying there in just total, just drenched in just tears.
Mm.
And my sister and my mother were there, and my parents had just got their divorce. And so for me, it was like when God brought back all of those memories of all of those, or that vision of all those guys that I've dealt with, he also brought back that day. And the words that he said to me is, "You are chosen."
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is when you're chosen by God, you can't run from the calling that he has on your life. He's gonna always, you know, remind you, especially when he gives you conviction. And so what I had was a heavy conviction that I needed to change my ways. I needed to change how I looked at things and how I seen things and how I made choices. I needed to understand why I was making those choices because I was so hurt because I had given my all in that relationship. And it's like I would find a little bit of what I wanted in one person, but then I find a little bit of what I want in the other person, like in these different relationships. And it's like, well, why can't I just find one with everything? Like I wanted somebody that would work on stuff and, because when I was growing up, my daddy fixed everything. And so that's what I loved about him and still do to this day. Like he fixed on everything, but we didn't call a plumber or a sewer line person. Like we didn't call, he fixed everything. I don't remember people coming in and doing anything other than the people that built the house. And so and he was even out there helping them with that. But even in that, it was like, that's what I desired. But then, of course, when you desire it and you don't know the full rim of it, then there's other things that come with that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there were things like with my father, sometimes he wanted to control a whole lot. Okay. That's what I have. So I don't need someone that's going to control or want to be controlled. I need somebody that's going to be able to compromise. So when I started looking at all those things and seeing what I desired, where did that come from in a man? So a lot of it came from what I received and what I didn't receive. So I said, God, let me heal so that I can have what you would have for me. And I have been single ever since 2019.
Okay.
It's not the fact that I cannot be in a relationship or I don't want to be in a relationship. I just desire who God has for me. And I also desire to be that person equally.
Yeah.
And so there's things that he has to continue to work on because sometimes most of my friends are married and they're like, well, honey, at least you don't have to deal with this or that. And so, but I'm like, well, maybe God is still working on me on that because you got to have grace and you got to have patience that you have to give to someone. And so for me, once I realized those things that I was seeking was really out of insecurities of not receiving it. And so I asked God to secure me in those areas. What do God's word say about me? And it says in Psalms 139:14, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made in his image. Mm-hmm. And then it also says in Proverbs 3:5-6, because I had a real big problem with trusting people because of how my family was, and it was dysfunction. And he said that Proverbs 3:5-6 is, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. I may not be quoted in verbatim, but yeah, but that's things that I had to do. And then my aunt gave me these scriptures when I was pregnant with my youngest daughter. She gave me Proverbs 3:5-6, and she gave me Hebrews 13:5-6. And she gave me those things, and she told me that I was going to always be her niece as her Hebrew child. And I couldn't understand what she meant by that. And meaning what she said is the word Hebrews. And even in the book of the Bible, Hebrews these things in you and also out of you.
Mm.
So you are not defined by what your parents did, the dysfunction that you grew up in. You're defined by who God says who you are. And that's what she was trying to get me to see. And she gave me the scripture, Jeremiah 29:11. I know everybody know that one. And so, for I know the plans I have for you to prosper you, not to harm you, but to give you hope and a future. And the hope and the future was what I needed. That's what I stood on, because my faith had to be my anchor through every step that even I heard God saying. Even when I didn't hear him, I had to keep faith. And he just says mustard seed. Mustard seed is some, I think it's smaller than a crumb,
Mm.
a breadcrumb, let's say. And so I had to lean into God for clarity, for strength, for direction, everything. How to raise my children, how to heal, how to deal with family members, even when I realized what was going on, and even having to forgive. Because before the breakup, in 2019, same year, that was a purging year, I believe. I realized that relationship was not for me. So I didn't want to just go off to break up from someone. I wanted to heal. I wanted to
Mm.
seek God in it, because I didn't seek him in the beginning before getting in. I just did what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so when I prayed about it, he began showing me him, but he also began healing me to not to be able to detach. And that when I did find out the truth about things, that it wouldn't hurt me, it would help me. And
Mm.
so, even in that, before that was in January, and I also started going through a it's called a purposeful experience with another coach. And I went through with her, and she said, "What is it?" She said, "Who is it that you need to heal from before you can walk into your purpose?
Mm.
Who is it, or what is it that you need to heal from?" And the first thing that came to mind was my father, because of all the things that my mother would say and the things that I would see with my own eyes and hear with my own. I grew up in a really small town in Mississippi, so everybody knew everybody and everybody was kin. And so I think the thing from that for me was I wrote him when we went through everything, and I cried, and crying. And for anyone that thinks crying is weak, it is not. It's two things for me. It is a sign and a symbolism of cleansing. It's
Mhm.
also, not only is it a symbolism of cleansing, but it's also a prayer, a liquid prayer to God. Never, if you have to cry, don't hold back on it, because that's something that is so profound and symbolic to you releasing those things off of you and onto Him. And that's a whole lot I can go on that area too. But I would say that when I went through that experience, it was like a 3-month coaching program, mentor coaching program. And one thing I did was, she said, if he can't, she said, well, why can't you talk to him? I said, well, he is still in his old ways. I just want him to tell you, I'm say he's sorry. I want him to admit to the things that he did, the things that he hurt me and my mother on, all this other stuff. By this time, I had lost my mom in 2014. Of
Mm.
breast cancer. So when she and I were starting to talk, she was tired of life. She was tired of going through chemo and all of those things. And so some things she would admit to, and other things she was like, you know what, just let that go. Let it be what it is. And one thing that you don't want to do as a single parent is continue to sweep things under the rug and not be transparent with your children.
Mhm.
Because you say you trust God and you believe in God, there's a lot of other things to pull them away if you're not the example that they need to see. If you're not transparent about your feelings, if you're not transparent about who you are and what you're still struggling with. Because we're
Yeah.
not perfect. None of us are. And so, even in that coaching program, because he and I couldn't have a conversation without arguing, I think right before that, we argued in front of my children. And he cried and I laughed at him, just being honest. Because it was in front of my children, I didn't want them to do that to me. So
Yeah.
I decided to let go without an explanation, without my questions answered, without him admitting to the truth. So I wrote him a 5-page letter, front and back, of everything that I held against him. And at every situation that I brought up to him, I told him after that, I no longer hold this against you.
Wow.
And I mailed it to him, and I was 20 minutes away from him. And I had called him about something, and he was like, I said, well, Dad, did you get your letter? He was like, yeah, I don't know why you got it, but you should have just, I said, oh, see, yeah, I just knew he was going to be all of that. But because every time I wrote that letter, every word that I wrote and everything that I wrote in that process, I cried, I screamed, I yelled, I hollered, and that was a releasing for me.
Yeah.
That was a healing. That was the start of my healing from one situation so that I could let go of another one. And so
Mhm.
sometimes we have to figure out, that's why we need to ask God. We need to pray to Him for clarity and strength to let go, to have the courage to face the things that are not only within us, but the people that we love the most. And sometimes for for me, I had to understand that God's love is unconditional. And if
Mhm.
anyone outside of that, mother, father, whoever it is conditional, that they only accept you if you do the will of God, or if you do. Sometimes we got to get it wrong before we can get it right. So
Right.
if God can love me with my little sinful self, He can. I need to be able to be loved by my family members, or my mother, my father. And if they don't, it's the reciprocity for me. If you can't love me unconditionally, then you're not gonna love me when I am at that point that where you can say, "Oh, well, that's my daughter, or that's my sister, or that's my cousin, or whatever. That's my mom." And so, in that, I had to really understand that transformation had to take place, and it shaped how, even how I create my content for my business, so the programs and the spaces for single parents. Being transparent is key for me. Communication is key, because if you can have one conversation, like I stated earlier, it can change the trajectory or outcome of a situation. And everything that I do now, it flows from a place of obedience, trust, and confidence in the calling that God has placed on my life. And again, if if someone if anyone hears me, I would love for my children to hear and see me, because they know the struggles, they know the things that we've gone through, and they also know who God is. And aside from that, that helped me to my faith helped me to even create a safe space, not only for them but also a faith space for them learning about God for themselves. Meaning that we have morning prayer and we have evening prayer, and I've already even taught them how to fast. And they're at different ages, 24, 17, and 15. And they are children that still have issues, still have things that I'm like, baby, you know what? You are throwing in my side, but I'm going to love you anyway. So even in the faith part and mindset, and they see this business and they see it being created, and they see, the coaching, and they see people, reaching out, and they see me posting and staying up to midnight sometimes, or we could be doing different things. Like, why are you taking your computer with you? But they can see all of these things, but it's the obedience part that I said, just like I'm being obedient, y'all have to be obedient when it comes to me. I have to be obedient when it comes to God. Because if he has placed something creative in my life or for my business, and he's told me to do it, then that's what I need to do. I need to focus on it. And sometimes it may take months, it may take weeks, it may take days. But sometimes I get one part right, and then I got something else I have to do with it. Even if it's just posting saying, hey, I'm launching this. I might
Mhm.
not even know how that program's gonna work. But I'm launching it because people need to know, oh, well then I can have one, because I had just launching soon called Coaching Moments with Coach Sheree. And so that's to have more intimate setting. I'm not about a dollar. I work with you. I want you to heal. I want you to see God in the way that I've been able to see Him and grow. And it may be in a different way because all of our circumstances are different. But one thing I always say to myself, and I'll say to other single parents, this is just your right now situation, not your forevermore circumstance. Your faith has to be your mindset. Your faith will be the only thing that will change your mindset. And once that transformation takes place, it doesn't mean that everything will be all peaches and cream, because it won't. Or it'll be the start of the opening of the rest of the areas in your life to be transformed. You'll be freed from that. Just like I stated about forgiving my father, I was able to be free in my with that relationship. So when the hurt came and the truth came, I was like, oh, then that opened the door for other things to heal. And now I'm in this place now. I don't mind saying what's on my mind. I don't mind letting go of people. It sometimes hurt me to even be as real and transparent and open. But that's where my faith comes in at, because I have to be honest, and God has given me that strength and courage. And I learned I don't have to curse folks out now, just to get my point across. I About it. Oh, sometimes we try to rise up because people do try those things. But one thing about it is, even if those things come out, I can say, you know
Mhm.
what, God, I did. I apologize for allowing because that's where the conviction of the Holy Spirit comes in at. And I
Mm-hmm.
can say, God, I'm sorry for, not allowing you to lead my tongue or the way that I was supposed to speak. But, you know how I am. So that button was pushed, God. You still working on me in that area, because I just think God got to be comical because he created me. But sometimes I have to laugh to keep from crying and have a sense of humor so that you don't allow the heaviness of the situations to control who you are, because your identity is not in your situations, it's in who God has created you to be. No, we're not already there, because we got to get away from having that microwave mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you got to have an oven or a
Yeah.
slow cooker mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And because that's the way God moves. He don't move with the microwave or the flick of a light. He moves with the oven, the slow cooker, the roaster. He moves slow sometimes, but he's always on time.
Oh, that's right. Sometimes we need the oven because we need to be cooked through and through. You know,
Exactly, because
some
you
of
don't
us
want to
want to
get
be
in that.
toasted and not
Right.
cooked.
And that's my thing. Like if you go to a restaurant and you get a steak, everybody loves steaks. The most people do, or chicken or whatever it is your favorite meat to eat, or
Mhm.
ribs. And you look at that rib or that steak or that chicken, and it's not done and it's raw and it's the red coming through or bleeding. You're like, oh, I'm not paying for this. You gotta go
Mhm.
back and cook me another piece. But if they take that same piece and don't get you a fresh piece and still try to cook it, and it's too done.
Yeah.
So when you want God to do things in your life, you have to understand it's just like how we desire things.
Mhm.
He don't want us stepping into our blessings too soon, and we're not mature enough to handle them. That
Yeah.
we don't give him the glory, but we end up giving ourselves the glory. And
Mhm.
so in all of that, that's one of the things that's the place I'm in a lot of areas of my life, and that's what I had to do then. And I was 35 at the time, 30, no, 38, 39. 35 was when I started having realizations. But by 38, 39, because after my mother died, I wanted to be married. And I wanted to be married before I was 40. And I was like, gosh, I already lost my mom. Am I going to lose my father next? He need to walk me down the aisle. Well, she was supposed to help me do my decorations, but she's not here.
Yeah.
Do we really need all of that stuff? Like, all I need to know is that this man is from you, God. For real, you sure? Like, I need to know. And we can just go to the justice of the peace. I'm not, but we don't have to have none of that other stuff. But it's just one of those things that I had to get away from, because sometimes who you are and what you grow up and how you grow up and the influences that you have, grandparents, parents, great grandparents, aunts, uncles, great aunts, all of that can influence who you are, because you think you're supposed to have this or that. I
Mhm.
grew up with all the name brands. I grew up with all the finer things. My parents had money, but I didn't
Mhm.
have a home. Our house wasn't a home. It was broken. It was dysfunctional. I mean, when I say dysfunctional, like my mother and father pulled a gun on each other, and it just happened.
Mhm.
Both of them jammed, and I was in the car with my
Oh
mother.
wow.
So when I say, whew, yes, it does. Just because people don't look like what they've gone through, that the reason
Mhm.
why we don't is because God is the one who is keeping us, and He's
Yes.
sustaining us, and He's helping us have the mindset of faith and being able to transform. But we do have to surrender ourselves, our will, our plans, ourselves to Him in order to live on purpose.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's a
I know that's a
powerful.
lot. That's a lot of share.
It is, but it's amazing because I think, we all have a good picture, of how God has molded you through these processes, and you're still standing and gorgeously sitting and standing.
Thank you. Amen to that.
God can bring us through, and you're right. We don't look like what we've been through, but our testimony and how we impact others is how people know,
Mhm.
right? That you've been through, right? You've been through and came through the other side. So I heard so much in what you were saying, and I thought to myself, I know she's proud of this, but let me not be presumptuous. So what part of your story are you just most proud of, or maybe even surprised by?
Oh, oh my goodness, that's a lot right there. I think a lot of times that God just keeps coming through for me.
Mhm.
That I
Yeah.
still have the strength to keep going, and I know it's only Him. Because
Mhm.
sometimes I have asked Him, why me, God? Of all people, why me?
Yeah.
But I do know that this was the path for me, because had I not had my children, I probably would have been gone by now. And now, as much as I don't know if I would have pushed as hard to heal if I didn't have them. I don't know if I would have pushed as hard if I didn't have someone else to love when I didn't love myself.
Mhm.
Because now I do. And now my desire for a mate is totally different. I don't need you to complete me. I need you to complement me. That's what I desire. And not just in the physical or the way you speak and what you're doing in life, but compliment me in your relationship with God, that you know who God is, that I can elevate as well when I connect with you. You can elevate as well when you connect with me. But I would have to say that, um, oh gosh, ask that question one more time, because I think I lost my train of thought because I was
What
getting
part no problem. What part of your story are you most proud of or surprised by?
probably. So I'm proud of the fact that I no longer need the people that I once thought I needed, meaning family members. And I'll be very, 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 very transparent. Right. I want to say, because I'm the youngest, I've always looked at everyone else. My sister is the oldest, and it's only the two of us. And she went to school. She got her, went to high school, graduated, went to college, graduated, got her degree in nursing. And I always looked up to her, because it was like she was the one who quote unquote made it. Because on my parents' divorce, she was in college and I was still at the house having to deal with everything. And so um, I think that I always looked up to her, but it was also a comparison as well, to some
Mhm.
extent, because I thought I had to do like her, because she would always say, well, you know what we went through. So you need to make sure you don't do 1, 2, 3, ABC. But I did the very thing that she didn't want me to do. Because if we go a little further back, before I graduated in 1999 from
Mhm.
high school and went to college, and I was just buck wild. Let's just be honest, because I didn't have any, like
Uh,
I didn't have any freedom too. That was another thing my mom did. She kind of kept me, at the house, kept me under control, and so I was working in high school and in the band, and that was it. That's all she was approving. But um. And all of that, I think that getting away from that comparison spirit, getting away from feeling as if I needed people, those people that, as I grew in life and as I began to ask questions, and I would always be told, why are you so worried about that? That happened 20 plus years ago. Why are you still mad about it? And
mm,
for me, it was like, I was afraid to let go and have conflict and let go of those relationships. Ooh, my God, thank you. That's all I can say, because I feel his presence.
mm,
Because at this very moment in my life, I do not speak to my older sibling. And I say that because the dysfunction that happened when we were younger, it affected us as we got older. Because it was okay for our parents to fight, so then we fought each other. And that changed how I looked at her, because well, she went the straight and narrow route, and my mom say I went the scenic route. And before she passed, she said, you are my strong child. You're gonna
mm,
have to take care of the family. I didn't know what she meant by it, but I've always seen, her go to church. I've always seen my mom go to church and, talk about God. And she had a relationship with God. But one of the things that I didn't want to do is not show my relationship with God through my actions, how I handle situations, how I handle people. And the reason that my sister and I don't speak is because we just spoke recently, but it's been a year since we had seen each other. Maybe a little longer than that. But she started having some things going on in her life that was similar to what we dealt with, as because she's married, and she has one child, and that was similar to what we dealt with. But and all of that, it was, I always did what everybody else wanted me to do. Even like I said, the school I chose, how I raised my oldest daughter, their influences of how I raised my oldest daughter. If I wanted to do something, they said don't do it. Okay, but you ain't nobody mama yet. I'm the first one to be a mama. But that's what I'm saying in my mind. But again, I internalized everything
mhm,
just as I did as a kid, because with these same people, there was no safe space. And so I'm glad that I don't have to receive their validation or approval, or that I don't have to please them. That it's okay to have good conflict. And what I mean by that is this: even if you have to scream to the top of your lungs, because some people just don't hear. So a lot of people listen to respond. They don't listen to understand. And that's
Mhm.
most of my family members. And me, I'm a communicator. I have to listen to understand what you're saying so that I can respond in the right way. And
Mhm.
even if you keep saying, well, no, I don't understand, something's going to click in me to say, okay, well, what do you mean by that? To ask more questions. And so, um, but it hurt to have those conflictual conversations, or those conversations that they would say, well, you know what? I don't want to deal with you anymore. I'm done with you. Me, I'm just saying how I feel.
Yeah.
But it's different from the usual Sheree, that it's okay that Sheree knows God now and that she prays, but it's not okay that I'm telling you how I feel. That what you said hurt me. That okay, well you can feel that way, but that's not gonna change how I feel. I am choosing peace in my life. I'm not choosing dysfunction. If you have things going on in your home versus what I have going on in mine, I'm not gonna have my kids privy to those things. So in all of that, what, like I said beforehand, when there's layers and things that come back, when you begin to grow, it doesn't mean that everyone else in your circle, in your life that you love, are are going to grow with you. Sometimes God puts you in a season of isolation, and that's where I'm at. I don't hate them. I don't have any on my heart against them, but I will refuse to not set boundaries because I haven't set them before. And when you begin to set those boundaries, because I learned what they are, that means I don't have to tell you my business. I don't have to seek you how to raise my children. If you want to be a part of this village, then you have to realize I am the mama, but God is the head of this mama, you know. And so
Yeah.
there were decisions made for my oldest daughter that were made without me, but because again, I was a broken mother raising a broken child, who
Mhm.
thought that everyone else was better because they could provide, and mama was always struggling financially. That was something that, I just, oh, okay, well, I just let her get what she wants. And it kind of brought me into this user mentality.
Mhm.
And those were things that I'm glad I don't have to lean in. I don't have to be in survival mode anymore.
Yeah.
I'm thriving. I don't have to people please anymore. I'm free of those things. Oh God, that's such a
Yes.
blessing to say, because even though I love those people, even though I care for them and I don't want anything to happen to them, I still pray for them. I pray for our relationship. I pray for reconciliation. And I also pray for the removal of discord. But at the end of the day, in this season of isolation, I will press into the presence of God, into His Word. I will teach my children. I will even be transparent about how I feel. And I do. And they know it.
Mhm.
And it's one of those things where if you don't accept me for who I am, okay, I'm okay with that. I realized that I no longer need a lot of people to be who I am. I only need one person, and that's God.
Amen. Amen. Wow. You have given us a mouthful, a head full. It's amazing. It's been amazing. You have really given us a lot, and I know I'm thankful for the journey that you've taken. I think sometimes, we all have. I know a story, but we all don't heal. Many of us don't take the time to heal and to forgive and to be whole.
Right? Because there's
Um,
that thing like move on,
yeah.
or moving forward. But are you moving forward with baggage,
Hmm.
or are you moving forward empty so that you
Yeah.
can receive? Because even moving forward, are you leaving behind the baggage? Have you healed from those things? Because I was telling my kids the other day that there was this thing that I was going to do. And as we were in a devotional, I can't remember which one we were in, but it was talking about the baggage that we have in our lives. So of course, it's certain things such as like insecurities, or fear, or doubt, or worry, or a lying tongue, or not listening to God's voice, whatever that may be. If you put bricks on your body, it knows with those different things that you're dealing with, not unhealed, unforgiveness, a hardened heart, toxic lips, or whatever you want to say, whatever those things are, if you begin to walk around with that, you're going to become heavy.
Yeah.
But that's how we're walking around heavy, but saying that that person's the fault. No, take accountability. Where are you at fault at? Even if that means you're allowing this to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You're not choosing to speak up for you, because each time you speak up for you, you are choosing you if no one else does. You can't make people love you the way God does. They have to make that choice. And when they don't, it doesn't say anything about you that you're not worthy of love. It says you don't want fake love. You don't want that type of love. We want that unconditional agape love that Christ has for the church.
Yes.
And if we cannot have that, you won't have it from those people if they're not seeking God, if they're not earnestly seeking Him and changing to transform not only their mindsets, but their actions and how they treat people. Because it says a lot about themselves if they're still angry about something from 20-some years ago, or if they get angry if you bring it up from 30-some years ago. Yeah, that hurt me. And there's a rug that I had before I'm getting ready to move. So before I moved it out of my garage, I had it outside, and I was like, when you lifted it up, and it was a lot of dust and dirt and all kind of stuff just from outside wind and everything in there. And I was like, goodness, let me sweep out the garage. And as I was sweeping it out, I was like, this is the form of the things that, this is a symbolism, I told my kids, of things that this is what we do with the issues and the problems that we have, the things that bother us. Because it's happened years ago, even though it's still hurting someone else. Oh, well, girl, get over there. Because 5 people are over and that one person's not, then it's not an issue. No, it is an issue. And so every time I swept that stuff out of there, I was like, you know what, this is what I'm talking about. So I'm sweeping it under the rug. Let's have a conversation about it. But sometimes the reason why people aren't ready is because, for one, they're not seeking God to be ready to let go. For 2, it's securing something within them that's insecure. And for 3, it's going to make them face themselves. And sometimes people are not ready for that. And it's also them holding themselves accountable. And if they're not ready for that, you can't make them ready. You just have to pray for them and keep growing in the space that you're in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you've done an amazing job doing that. At least it sounds like it.
Yeah,
So
yes, it's not easy, and I don't always get it right, just being transparent. But
yeah,
I do get it wrong. I do thank God for His grace and His
yeah.
mercy, and especially His favor, because He knows my heart. And I'm grateful that I still have that conviction and it hasn't been lost.
Yes, amen to that. Amen to that. Well, Coach Sheree, it has been amazing talking to you this evening. I mean,
Yeah,
this has
it has
been a
been
great
amazing
conversation.
too.
I
Yeah,
almost feel like we could have 2, 3, 4 parts because I think there's so much
there is.
inside of
Unpacked.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much inside of you. But I want you to take this time and tell this audience, how can they connect with you? Where are you? Do you have a website? Anything that you want to share with the audience right now?
Absolutely, absolutely. So on my Facebook page, I am at the Single Parent Life Coach. That's how you'll find me, as on my business page for Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, even Snapchat. Um,
Right.
also on YouTube, as well as it. I also have a Single Parent Life community Facebook group on Instagram and TikTok. I'm not TikTok, Instagram and Facebook, and so you can find me under that as the single parent life community. To join that group, there's no, you have to answer questions to get into that group, but I promise you, there's information that will help you on your daily journey. And if you need to reach out to me, I can be reached via email at info@thesingleparentlifecoach.com. If you want more information, you can also go to my website at www.thesingleparentlifecoach.com. Hope to hear from you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for being on the Kingdom Creatives podcast. It has been an amazing discussion, and we will look forward to seeing her in the future at some point. Listen, audience, don't forget to go to debhowardonline.com. Check out the events that we have coming up. let me just remind you, Kingdom Wealth Warriors Summit, October 11th, 2025. So you can go there and get more information. Thanks again for joining the Kingdom Creatives from Vision to Voice podcast. Don't forget to join us for another episode. Go ahead and subscribe if you're on YouTube. And of course, we broadcast on Facebook, but subscribe so that you don't miss an episode on YouTube. Until next time, you already know what I'm going to say. Go have your most abundant day, and we'll see you soon.